This is an ad from BetterHelp. This holiday season, do something for a special person in your life. You. Give yourself the gift of better mental health. BetterHelp Online Therapy connects you with a qualified therapist via phone, video, or live chat. It's convenient and affordable and can be done from the comfort of your own home. Having someone to talk to is truly a gift, especially during the holidays. Visit BetterHelp.com to learn more and save 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop last-minute deals now.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rebecca Larson, and today I am once again joined by one of my favorite people, Dr. Emma. Emma, welcome back.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I say one of my favorite people, but I think you are my favorite person.
Oh, thank you. You're my favorite person too.
Oh,
I think people are going to be like, no, there they go.
Like I was going to say, don't tell your husband I'm your favorite person.
I think he can hear us sometimes. So, we have to be careful.
Yes, we do. Well,
by the way, now that you mentioned my husband, he did have a suggestion for today's episode that I will tell you later on.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm very
It's
much
a family business now, this Dr. Emma thing.
I imagine you guys sitting at the dinner table at night just talking about Katherine of Aragon.
No, I'm not allowed. Not at the dinner table.
That's where the line is, at the dinner table.
Yeah. For those 45 minutes. Oh, it's so difficult too, because every other topic I'm like, well, this reminds me. But no, you have to, when you study something so much, you do need breaks from it too. And obviously family time is always, there's a lot of talking about Christmas and the holidays and all of that right now, because I have a 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old. So it's getting exciting. Yes. Our tree is up. We need to decorate it today.
Oh, so, fun.
Yes,
I have what you would call a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Just this sad, pathetic, skinny little 6-foot tree. It's decorated. It's, it's got lights. It's got bows on it. It's, it serves its purpose.
It's about the spirit, Rebecca. I love Christmas, and I love Christmas in Minnesota because every other place you look at, it looks like there's a Christmas tree there. So when I first came here, there's a segment about Minnesota at the beginning of every episode. I used to think this place is going to look so pretty in Christmas time, and it does. It does look pretty. Pretty cold it looks.
It does look nice when there's snow on all the pine trees. Like it's beautiful.
It is a winter wonderland, and to wake up to that in the holidays, it's just wonderful.
It is. Yeah. Last year we didn't really have any snow on the ground.
No,
I think it rained on Christmas Eve last year, if I recall.
And that reminds me of back home in Spain, because, I've told you many times I'm from the north, and the winter time is usually overcast and it's raining. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I prefer the snow for Christmas. I prefer the snow since we have all those pine trees and it looks so pretty and it's wonderful. And yeah, I'm excited for the holidays. I love them. As a good Spaniard, I love any occasion to party. So I'm excited for the holidays.
Well, good. Well, I'm excited to talk about our subject today, which should come as no surprise. It's going to be Katherine of Aragon. Nice. But today,
guys, I'm sorry.
You know what? Don't apologize. I think it's great. We're teaching the world more about Katherine of Aragon, and today
I think some people have tuned out like 5 episodes ago. Okay, enough about this lady.
Can we talk about Anne Boleyn again? Yes, we can talk about Anne Boleyn.
Well, we do talk about Anne Boleyn more and more too. Yeah. And just because obviously when you have to talk about Anne Boleyn when you talk about Catherine. But I think that since her birthday, Catherine of Aragon's birthday is coming up very soon, we could talk more about her today. And how that really came to fruition, how that happened, how she was born, and she was where she was born and all these things, because I think even though people think they know a lot of things about Catherine of Aragon, you might be surprised about some of the facts about her, first years, her life, where she was born, where she was raised. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Let's talk about this because her birthday is coming up actually this weekend. And so this is why
Yes.
we wanted to get the episode out in time for this because
Oh.
this is a big deal. So Emma, basically, I'm just going to turn the mic over to you because this is your baby and you know so much more about it than I
Yeah,
do. Let's talk
yeah.
about Catherine, young Catherine, her birth, what her
Yes,
childhood
yes.
was like.
Yeah, definitely. So if you go and check any Catherine Aragon biography currently, most biographers date her birthday on the 16th of December, which is coming up very quickly, right? But when we go to the original source and Catherine's birth is registered in the chronicles of the time of Isabella and Fernando, her parents, the Catholic monarchs, the first source that cites her birth is Hernando del Pulgar, the chronicle, like Edward Hall would be for Henry VIII and the Tudors. And he actually mentions the 15th of December, not the 16th.
Hmm.
So I'm not quite sure where that, some little error of translation, maybe one of the first, I'm not sure that the Strickland sisters maybe were the first ones to say the 16th, and then that just got carried on throughout other biographers. But yes, we do have a mention to her birth. This is a chronicle that goes on for many years of the reign of Isabel and Fernando, and it says that at the end of December, on the 15th of December, when the king and queen had arrived in Alcalá de Henares, and we'll talk about this place, the queen had a baby girl, and they named her Catherine, Catalina, right? So Alcalá de Henares is a place that it's near Madrid, the capital.
Can you say it without an accent?
Uh, Alcalá de Henares. I don't know. Wow, I just butchered that. Sorry, people.
I'm
Sorry to
sorry I
any
asked.
Spaniard that's listening to me right now.
Sorry I
You're gonna
asked.
hate me for But yes, it's a complicated name basically because Alcalá is a word that comes from Arabic. So any word with that starts with al in Spanish usually comes from Arabic. So Alcalá is just a place outside Madrid, like I said, but this is a very famous place because one of the first universities, very important universities in Spain, started, founded by a bishop. And for example, the first polyglot Bible was published there when Catherine was Queen of England, and she received one of the copies.
Hmm.
The books tell us, and Henry VIII received a copy of the polyglot Bible from the University of Alcalá de Henares, but I think it was sent to Catherine, obviously, because that's where she had been born. This is also a very important place for the Spanish language because it is the place where the Instituto Cervantes is based. Instituto Cervantes is an institution that works to spread the Spanish language in the world. So, and this is because Alcalá de Henares and that university has always been linked to humanism and all those types of new learning things. And in the time of of Isabel and Fernando, for sure, because the bishop that was in charge of that city was a very powerful man, and he did a tournament for the birth of Catherine. They say parties, feasts, festivals, and all the ladies and the knights joined the party and the tournament. So you have to think like when you go to any Renaissance festival, and you, for example, in Minnesota, you can see the tournament, and that's kind of like the party they had when Catherine was born in this place called Alcalá de Henares. I know it's difficult, but it's just outside Madrid. So if you decide to go, they have a statue to her in the Archbishop Palace where she was born, and you can see where she was born, and it's the original building too. So how cool is that, isn't it?
Wow, that's really cool. There's so much history over there that we're just missing out on. We really do need a Spain trip, don't we?
We do, we do. And because it's not very far away from Madrid, it's not very far away from the Prado Museum where we can go and visit, for example, her mother, Isabel, in a picture that was painted probably in England, they say, in the Prado Museum, because it's linked to the marriage negotiations of Arthur, Tudor, and Catherine, but also Mary the First by Antoninus More, right? Her daughter was painted by Antoninus More, and they're now together. They're now together. So, that would be a very cool thing to do, to go to the Prado Museum and visit that, and then go to Alcalá de Henares where Catherine was born. It's not far away.
Yeah, that sounds like a good adventure.
Well, and not very far from there, and this is because obviously Madrid being the capital of Spain, and the court developed there since the time of Philip II. So after Mary Tudor dies and Philip returns to Spain and becomes, a resident king in Spain, right? Because he stays in Spain, and he decides that the capital is going to be Madrid. That area becomes very rich in other buildings and new projects. And one of the most important ones is called the Monastery of San Lorenzo del Escorial. El Escorial is a monumental monastery palace that was built by order of Philip II. And in that palace, that was built after Catherine of Aragon lived, but in that palace, in their library, they have a copy, one of the only copies of one of the first translations done from English into Spanish, commissioned by Catherine of Aragon to her secretary, the Chronicle of the Kings of England, that in 1508 she decides and tells her secretary to finish with her own coronation. This is 1508.
What?
Just killing off Henry VII, basically, and sending it to Spain. Well, he's very poorly, so we're just going to say he died and I'm queen. That's how I want you to finish it, And it's true. Who was going to say, oh, this is treason? Nobody read Spanish except for her secretary, her people. And so that's what she knew Henry VII was dying when she commissioned that, obviously.
Where is this now?
In San Lorenzo del Escorial, in the library. They have a very rich collection of manuscripts from Isabella of Castile, from Philip II, Mary Tudor. This is a place. If you've never seen this place, you should Google it, and you'll see why you should also include it in that tour, the Spanish tour. There's so many other places, of course. This is Spain. Rebecca, you need to come to Spain.
It's going to be like a 6-month tour.
Yeah, 6 months. We'll say 6 months, and then we'll see. We'll take it from there, right?
Right, exactly.
This is only the Madrid area, and I've only touched like a little tip of the surface here. But anyway, she was born in Alcalá de Henares. Let's go back to her birth. This is a suggestion my husband did. It's like, talk about what was going on in the world around the time that Catherine of Aragon was born, right? This is important. So she was born in the year 1485, at the end of 1485. So that summer, what happened that summer? Rebecca.
That was the Battle of Bosworth. Richard III was defeated and Henry VII became king.
Yeah? Never heard of that battle.
Yeah,
right?
So this would have only been a few months before she was born that this happened.
So that was in the summer, yeah.
Yeah, August.
And Isabella was pregnant.
Wow.
Because she had the baby in December, right? And she had one son, and she had three daughters, right? So she had Isabel. She named her eldest daughter after her. Then Juan, her son. Juana, because they were very devoted to the Saint John the Evangelist, and Maria, to the Virgin Mary. Catherine would call her daughter Mary, and then the youngest one is born, and they name her Catherine, Catalina, after who?
Catherine of Lancaster.
Yes, good job, Rebecca. You've been listening. Good.
I know history.
Yeah. No, but Catherine of Lancaster, people should find out more if they don't know, because this is an extraordinary woman. She was regent of Castile for many years. So this means that she ruled Castile, basically. First with her brother-in-law, But then he was elected King of Aragon. This is a kind of a weird moment in the history of Aragon, that they have to elect a king. And he leaves, and she then rules as a regent on her own. And that little boy that she's ruling for is John II, Isabella of Castile's father. So this is why Isabel and Fernando decide to name her Catalina, because they're like, well, there's a new king in England. He marries Elizabeth of York, who is, also had been in contact with Isabel previously, because the Yorks had been in contact with Isabel. Isabel had English suitors, because she was, she had Lancastrian blood, more than Henry the VIII and Henry VIII, of course.
Yeah.
So Catherine had more English royal blood than Henry VIII, than Arthur Tudor, of course. Yeah.
I always love that fact.
Well, that's a one about English history, right? So basically the beginning, we could say, of the modern era in England, because the Tudors are really the dynasty that brings England out of the Middle Ages into the Renaissance, right?
Yeah. In
Spain, Isabel is about to meet a man who will change the course of history, called Christopher Columbus. She has Catherine 2 weeks prior to this first meeting with Christopher Columbus. So this is what is going on in the world, really.
Yeah.
In the Iberian Peninsula, Isabel and Fernando are very close to finishing this war they had set out to finish, the War of Granada, to conquer the last Moorish kingdom in the Iberian Peninsula. That has to be another stop. Granada, Pomegranate Granada, is a city in the south of Spain that was the last place to be conquered by Isabel and Fernando in 1492. So when Catherine is very young. But that's the same year Christopher. So all of these things that are major are happening in the first years of her life. But what's important to know also is that 1492, which is a year that a lot of things happened in the Iberian Peninsula, was the first year that Catherine was formally educated by an Italian instructor. Imagine how different her life is to the life of Margaret Tudor or Mary Rose Tudor, right? That we don't know when they were born. Well, we do know when they were born, but we don't know who taught them, or they were definitely not next to Henry VII while he was making all his decisions and fighting battles and that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Catherine was with her mother. Her mother would go with the armies of her father. She was always pregnant or with the children, but she was close enough. The children were in danger many times. There was a fire in one of their tents once because the war got so close. So Isabel didn't fight the battles, but was there as a protective figure, as a leader, they were a couple, they were a power couple, right? They worked in tandem, they worked together. So Catherine saw all of this as a little kid. Imagine what it was like for her, right?
Yeah, how different from the Tudors, because Elizabeth of York wasn't a monarch. She married Henry VII, and so she didn't have as much power as Henry VII had. So their children were raised by her, basically at Eltham Palace, and she educated them. And I'm sure they had other tutors, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you who that was.
Arthur had his own household, like John did. One of the things I think is important to know is I don't think Margaret of York is studied enough. I have found evidence that she designed a whole building, that she was involved in hiring painters to paint in Windsor, that she received the ambassadors of Hungary, that she, there needs to be a lot more work on Elizabeth of York. Sorry if I think it said Margaret of York.
You
before.
did. I was going to ask you if you meant Elizabeth.
Yeah. I meant Elizabeth of York. Sorry, Henry VIII's mother, and because it's very important in the case of Catherine, because she is still alive when Catherine arrives. She goes through the whole thing when Alpha dies, and she protects Catherine. And we do have her privy purse expenses for this time. She takes care of Catherine. She gives her money. She's acting like her mother. I think there needs to be a lot more work done on Elizabeth of York because she was a princess royal. She was, I found when I was doing my PhD evidence that she owned very richly illuminated manuscripts. I think it's just we don't know as much of this queen as we should, because definitely those little that little section of privy purse expenses that we see for the last of them, she's doing things that Catherine would basically try to emulate her, with new things that she brings from obviously from her education, but she definitely saw her as her role model. She was definitely doing things very well. And I think it's just been a problem of the perspective. I think Margaret Beaufort has taken over the narrative in this time of for the reign of Henry VII. I think we should think a lot more about Elizabeth of York being someone really important. The first Queen of England to be depicted in a painting that we still have. So it's very important to know that too. That Elizabeth was very involved in Catherine's education. She was the one to suggest that she would learn French when Margaret of Austria was there. So she was more involved than what people think. She was the one to send messages a lot with Isabella of Castile.
It makes me wonder if the reason why we don't hear as much about her is just because she is overshadowed, but also it kind of reminds me a little bit about like Jane Seymour, how similar her and Jane Seymour were, where they were like this pivotal figure for their husband, but yet they are so overshadowed and undervalued for their contributions.
Maybe they didn't contribute to the drama as much, and that's why they don't get their. Maybe they were stabilizing forces,
How boring.
and had agency, and got along with their husbands and did things with them. I found that she employed the king's painters, so we have to like also review this idea that the king is doing everything on his own and he's commissioning all these things, and he's in agreement with his wife and he's having a successful marriage. At the time, it was good for a king and a queen to act together, to bring all the agency that both of them had, and especially the Queen Elizabeth of York, not because she was English, but like Catherine of Aragon, she was foreign. All the agency she could bring with her international network. But Elizabeth of York had an international network because she was connected to Flanders. She was connected to Spain. She would send messages to Queen Isabel, and they called each other cousins. So they have a relationship as family.
Oh.
And they're just becoming even more family when they're going to marry their children, but they already consider themselves family. And Henry VII kind of tags along to that. But really, who, from what I've seen, is the one that has, probably because they're both mothers too, and I think Isabel is appealing a lot to Elizabeth, like, take care of my baby girl when she goes there. And when you see what happens, Elizabeth of York takes care of Catherine, and then when she dies is when Catherine is in trouble.
Yeah.
And then when Isabel dies in Castile, then she's in real trouble. And then is when she has to become an ambassadress. Maybe she wouldn't have become the first ambassadress in history if she didn't have that need, if her mother would have lived until she married Henry VIII. So sometimes these necessities for women trigger these incredible, groundbreaking moments, right?
Yeah, I love when you talk about Catherine of Aragon and Isabella Castile because they are just two strong women from history that
Exactly.
you can't help but admire looking back 500 years. You know, you look back 500 years and go, wow, these women were so intelligent and so brave for their time.
Yeah. I think Catherine had a big advantage. She was the youngest. She looked like her mother. She was very similar to her mother. And she had a character. She was a very intelligent person that had a very calm demeanor, character, was happy to learn, was happy to be involved, to please her parents. She was definitely she knew who she had to please, and she always understood her role. She was not going to be a ruling queen. So she understood that her role was with agency. She had to have agency. She had to have influence. She had to know people and be able to navigate people to get what she wanted or she needed or she thought was right? Because the most important thing is what her mom transmitted to her was duty. If God has called you to be Queen of England, this is your call. And you will only go to heaven if you fulfill your goal successfully, right? That's the whole premise of believing in that, right?
Oh, wow. Do you think she felt like she was successful in that at the end?
I think she tried until the very end, and we can see that in everything she did. Yeah, I think she really did try it to the very end. I think she was faithful to her belief system, and I think she was pretty successful. I mean, oof, she was very sure about it because she defended it till the very end. I mean, the last letter she writes to Henry, the thing that she asks him is, please don't condemn your soul.
Mm.
She's very worried about this, this problem that is she commissions works against Luther, against all the Reformation, because she's a humanist. She does it through encouraging the Catholic humanists to respond, but not respond with violence, respond with scripture, respond with arguments. She's just because she was taught by this Alexandro Geraldini, who was her main tutor. And think about this: Alexandro Geraldini was Christopher Columbus's biggest support in the court of Isabella of Castile.
Oh, wow.
This guy ends up being the first bishop in America, in Santo Domingo, from where they send gifts to Catherine.
Wow.
Like a chair of the cacique women. Her old secretary sends her stuff from there when Geraldini is there, because Geraldini, his biggest problem is he's made her chaplain, and when they go to England, he's one of the ones to say that he thinks that the marriage has been consummated.
Mm. Mm.
And that is a betrayal for Katherine of Aragon beyond anything she could accept. And what he says is, I think. He doesn't say I know. He doesn't say I have evidence. He says I think, right? But that's enough to trigger a crisis, obviously, because he's her confessor.
Mm.
So what happens is Catherine says, well, if you're going to believe this guy, I just want to become a nun.
Wow.
And what happens is Isabella says, Geraldini, come back home. Come back home. I need to tell you a few things about talking about a Spanish infanta without consulting with me first.
Come back here. We need to have a little talk, buddy.
Yeah. You know a new place we have over there? Well, Isabel dies, but eventually Fernando sends him to America. And he always tries to find his way back to Catherine, and she never caves. I talk a lot about Catherine being this great person and all that. If you wronged her, you were done. You were done forever. And
she held the grudge.
Yeah, I think, yeah, she did. Yeah.
Which is it's kind of interesting for somebody who is so pious. It seems like that would go against her piety.
I think yes, but if you think about it, if you are threatening the most sacred thing that she has, which is her virginity, and
yeah,
because to her, that's what needed to be protected for when she married the King of England, to be able to give him legitimate heirs. That was the whole point of her marrying a Tudor, was bringing legitimacy. What if she had, that's the whole point, right? The problem is that opens a can of worms, because later on, obviously, that comes back to haunt her, because it's funny how he said that, and then her dueña, who is the person who's in charge of her, said, how dare you say, there was a big fight over this, so another layer into that whole. And he ends up not only going to America, but he's an explorer. He writes about the new lands that he's seeing. He's not just, we don't need to think of him just as because he was a priest, he was just, confessing people and this and that. He was a true explorer. So that's the kind of person that taught Catherine of Aragon and the Sister Maria for years, while also Isabel is recruiting, for example, Flemish artists that are doing the best work in Europe. From one of them is not from Flanders, but he trains in Flanders. He's from all the way up in Taillin in the north of Europe. So this is the kind of atmosphere that she's growing up in. And then another person that comes to court and spends a lot of time with Catherine of Aragon is Beatriz Galindo, the Latinist, a woman who gets a nickname of the Latinist because she knows Latin better than anyone else in Castile. How cool is that?
That is cool. I love like the female empowerment there.
She's imagine that. Imagine being, and she was very young too. And the queen brings, and the reason why Isabel is interested in bringing a woman who knows Latin to talk to her daughters is the reason is the virginity and decorum and the fact that they spend time with women, not with men. She doesn't want, but this is such a novelty. Educating princesses is such a novelty that sometimes she has to recourse to men, especially in a confessor, right? Because that you couldn't have a female confessor. We know how the Catholic faith works. So, but in the case of Latin, she brings someone like Beatriz Galindo. She was very young. So, and she was the daughter of someone who was an editor. So this is what the kind of the humanist movement has brought to Castile, is the fact that some men in the humanities and the arts are training their daughters to be smart, to be educated. And then the queen is like, oh, she knows Latin, bring her over because she'll be perfect for reading to my girls, for practicing Latin. Then Margaret of Austria teaches her French. So, and the other important thing that we have to remember is they move around all the time. So she travels all around the Iberian Peninsula. She visited every city because the king and queen are required to make justice. That's the system there is in Castile and Aragon still. And the presence of the king and queen is required. So they were moving. It's an interior court that is moving all around the Iberian Peninsula all the time. And they always travel with their mom, and sometimes they travel on their own and do solo trips to represent their parents. Sounds very modern. Sounds like what they do nowadays, right?
How old would they have been when they did these solo trips?
Well, Catherine was very young because she was the youngest. So as early as 1489, when that painter from England paints the kids that summer, they're alone. They're alone with their eldest daughter.
So Catherine was like 4.
She was 3. And then how funny it is, and this is a great piece of evidence because it gives us insight into how that worked out. They brought sweets called, it's called pink sugar. So basically like cotton candy. Okay. To keep them entertained because Catherine was only 3. Imagine sitting for a painter who doesn't speak your language, who's like, they say Antonio Ingles or English. I think he was Flemish because all the painters that worked for Henry VIII were the ones that were doing portraits were Flemish. But imagine, so he didn't probably speak any, but certainly not Castilian. Maybe they got along, I don't know, in French. I don't know, but imagine like, don't move in this. And a little 3-year-old girl like, well, I don't care. And the other one was 5 and the other one was 6. And imagine that. Imagine that.
That would be impossible.
Well, they had help. They had help from the eldest, and that's what an eldest sister does, right? She was born way before the others. She was already a grown-up in those times, so she was acting as a second mother. Isabel Junior. There's a very good biography of her, but it's in Spanish by my good friend Ruth Martinez Alcorlo. If you guys want to check that out and practice your Spanish skills. And she was the one to facilitate that whole thing. So they were alone. The parents were somewhere else.
Wow.
So yeah, interesting. We also have, because we have the accounts of Isabel, we know what they were wearing. So we know what Catherine wore for that picture and the kinds of dresses and things she wore. They had they bought the most fashionable things in the most fashionable places. So whenever they would go to Valencia, that's where you bought your shoes. And whenever you go to Madrid, that's where you have your tailor to make the dresses for the parties. And then when you go to the north, you buy your coats because that's where they got the good wool. And they're just like modern day princesses, really.
Can you picture these items in your head when you read about them, these articles of clothing?
Yes, yes. What I really like to go over is the colors. So obviously because the royalty, and I see how Catherine gains her colors throughout the years, right? And important milestones when a treaty is going to be signed. Her that year she has more red velvet than other years, and so they're making all these things. So she's learning all this fashion thing that we've talked about in the past, right? But also her desk, her books, her notebooks. It's just very normal too. And it seems very on top of the education. And in the case of Juan, we see that there's a school in the palace. So the girls probably had a school too. And that's what Catherine replicates from Mary Tudor, I think, too, in England. And that's why Mary Tudor is the first polyglot monarch in England. One of the first and one of the, maybe one of the only ones.
Oh, are those fighting words?
Well, think about it. I mean, a lot of English monarchs speak French. A lot of them, the majority, I would say. And I would like to know if they know any other languages, which is fine. But I'm saying Mary Tudor spoke Latin. She had notions of Greek. She knew Spanish, French, English, Italian.
I think Elizabeth knew quite a few of those too.
Because she received that education the standard was set by Katherine of Aragon, yes. Yeah. And Edward cites Vives. He also says, Vives says, Edward VI, he says, Vives says, Vives was the guy that Catherine brought to educate Mary. So this is why Elizabeth is translating from Latin at a young age, because Catherine had enabled this. This was a practice of humanism, to practice translating. Mary did it too. So this is what Catherine brought, replicating what Isabel had done. In Catherine's case, she takes it up a new level because as far as I know, Mary Tudor had a male Latin instructor, no Beatriz Galindo in England, because there weren't women that spoke Latin, right?
Yeah.
But she did bring women artists to arguably train Mary to paint. Not only to paint, to basically be creative. We know that Catherine was very good with needlework. You need patents for that, the same way you need it for painting a picture. I think these are more connected than we know, and these patents could be used for in Catherine of Aragon's inventories. Her needlework and her paintings are together. So I think it's part of a same. They don't distinguish those things as much as we do, right? So these women artists that she brings, the thing is, Catherine is so powerful by this time that she can bring the best one, because we don't know about her as much nowadays. But Susanna Hornboot was the most famous artist at the time in 1520. And Catherine manages to bring her to England, even though her father, Gerard, is one of the highest paid artists in the court of Margaret of Austria. This is what Catherine manages. She's managed it with Torrigiano before. She manages it with Susanna and brings to the rest of her family. And then she manages with Holbein. So this is what Catherine does, is the same as her mother. Her mother brings Michel Sitao, who is a pupil of Hans Memling, one of, I hate to say this, leading Renaissance artists. But also Juan de Flandes. This is how you build a magnificent court. And Isabel knew portraiture was extremely important for the construction of the image of these women, because it's so new. Nobody, one of the things that I found the most in the sources in England is how surprised they are that there's a queen in Spain. They're like, "What queen? What do you mean a queen? Like a queen? Like a queen? Yeah, there's a queen, and they're like, oh, okay, maybe in the party we won't mention that, you know,
Right?
we'll just build a statue of the king." So in the festivities for the marriage of Catherine and Arthur, there's lots of parties that go on and like theatrical representations and thinking one of them is 3 trees with the King of England, the King of France, and the King of Spain. There's no sign of Queen Isabel there. But when we go to the portrait galleries, Isabel is there more. No, not more than Fernando, the same amount. So inside the palace, the queen is there, Queen Isabel.
Yeah.
And she's there since the reign of Henry VII. That portrait because it's 1489 when that English painter goes to Medina del Campo and arguably brings back those portraits of Isabel and Fernando. So imagine that. Imagine Catherine having a fight with Henry VIII and taking him to her mother's portrait and being like, she would say, I am right, you know? You need to remember these famous people, my parents. I know how to deal with these things.
Right.
Because they had those portraits.
I feel like you should write a book just on Catherine, and it should be titled Katherine of Aragon, Shaping the English Renaissance.
Oh, I love that.
There it is. Nobody can steal that now. I said that on air. It's recorded, time dated.
I am writing a book on that, by the way. The title, we'll see what it is. It's similar.
See?
Yes. Yeah, it's very important. Especially because I think, and we talk again about this, of Holbein. Holbein is the key to everything. We didn't have Holbein, we wouldn't probably be doing this podcast because we wouldn't have that emotional connection with the Tudors.
No, you're right.
And in the Six Lives exhibition, they already said it could have been Catherine. Well, they were picking up from my dissertation in 2020. I had a whole chapter explaining why it's Catherine who brought Holbein. I have more evidence now, and there'll be a lot of evidence in my book. But it's important for us to know that this doesn't mean Henry wasn't involved in these things. It means that it was through her agency that she was able to bring this. Right?
Yeah.
Especially because Holbein works in what is the last attempt to bring Henry back from the French alliance by Sir Henry Guilford and Catherine. Fun guy. Who doesn't like fall? Have you seen the Holbein portrait of Sir Henry Guilford?
Oh, yes.
He is dressed as Master of Revels. Why?
Because he's the fun guy.
Because it's commemorating that party that we talked about where Therouan was featured. Right?
I love that.
Your favorite Greenwich party? Right?
So for those who maybe haven't heard that episode, you'll have to do a quick recap of what that is.
Think about how cool is this? That building was designed by Elizabeth of York. And Simon 30 published this. This is not something I found out about, guys. But it's not something that people have picked on like it's amazing. Like a Queen of England that is still in the 15th century helps to design a whole building, and we're not talking about this?
Right. That's wrong. We should be talking about it.
What I see in the future is a TV show where we see this Holbein painting this view of Therouan, taking it from Baynard's Castle, where I said that workshop was, through the Thames, in the Queen's barge, up to Greenwich Palace, putting it there, Catherine arriving in her full Spanish attire, waiting for the French ambassador, saying, "It's perfect." Oh yeah, look at it. It's a magnificent. Thank you, Hans. Right?
It's such a slap in the face.
Like the Spanish colors you use. So pretty, that Spanish brown. because this is, the very detailed. And all these artists that Catherine has brought over the years work in this final project. She has a woman from Milan working on it. She has a guy from Naples working on it. She has Holbein working on it. She has Nicholas Kratzer, who is a German astronomer who works with Holbein to create sort of like, when you see like the solar system kind of, how do you call those? That when you make a project for school and you make the solar system.
Okay.
You know what those are? What are those called?
I have no idea what you're leading me to right
you
now,
do all
but
the planets, and then
I wanted to say like a diorama, but it's not a diorama.
I was thinking of a diorama. I was thinking of that word,
okay,
a diorama, right? Of a
okay.
solar system.
All right.
Well, they did that in bigger, about the constellations, about the predictions of the reigns of. They had done this for the marriage of Catherine of Aragon and and Arthur Tudor too. So they created like a false ceiling to showcase all these planets and the alliances, to say basically, leave while you're okay, French people. Okay? This is Spanish alliance territory.
It's like warning signs everywhere.
Yeah. In Spanish. Cuidado. What? And two triumphal arches. Right? Triumphal means when we beat you, right?
Yeah.
What happens to Fun Guy?
What does happen?
He gets in a fight with Anne Boleyn.
Oh.
She threatens him. And he says, you know what? I'm not going to organize any more parties here. I'm done.
He says, peace, I'm out.
Yeah. And he goes to Henry and says, hey, here, I don't want to organize any more parties because, your lady threatened me. And he's like, don't listen to her.
She's a woman.
Just stay. You're fine. He's like, no. I'll be in Leeds Castle if you need me. You've been to Leeds Castle?
I have been to Leeds Castle. So that's very...
Tell us how is it? Because,
Well, inside the castle itself is way more modernized than you expect it to be because a lot of it's been rebuilt and remodeled. But on the outside, it's absolutely fantastic. It is beautiful, and the water around it and the gardens. It is a fantastic place. And there's like a golf course out there too. So,
well, the amazing thing about Leeds Castle, it was remodeled at the time of Eleanor of Castile, because she bought it and remodeled it and created it. It's in a Spanish style, and she had Aragonese gardeners working there. So they brought in plants in it. So because it's in Kent and it's in the south, it has a climate that is more in the north of Spain. We have places like that. The north of Spain and the south of England are similar, and that's where and that is between London and when you go to Calais, Leeds Castle. So Sir Henry Guilford was taking care of this place because he was part of the Spanish alliance. He had a pomegranate of his coat of arms. Remember, he had been knighted by Fernando of Aragon in Burgos after fighting the War of Granada. This is where he gets all his ideas to bring Torrellano, Holbein. He's also involved. It's not just Catherine. It's the factions, right? In the court, you have the French faction, and Francis I and his faction send stuff. And if you see when Anne Boleyn has influence, for example, you can see it in the choir stalls in King's College Chapel. You can see that's the style is following the school of Fontainebleau, the school of Francis I, because, and they have H&A monograms for Henry and Anne Boleyn, because she favors that kind of art, the French influenced art, whilst the Sir Henry Guilford and Catherine favor Spanish art. But when I mean Spanish art, I don't mean Spanish art just from Spain. We have to think it's also from the Empire, Germany, and also from Flanders, because the Habsburgs are ruling over all these lands. So basically anything that's not France outside of England. This is the thing. Charles V is the most powerful monarch in Christendom. And I know we love the Tudors, but that's the reality. So they're the most influential. And he's having a fight with Francis. By the time it's 1525, Charles has captured Francis, and he's in Madrid. He's a prisoner. That would have been different, right? If Charles would have decided, well, We're just gonna take things our own way.
My favorite thing about having you on the show, Emma, and I think listeners would agree to this, is that when you come on the show, we don't just talk about Catherine of Aragon. We get the broader scope of what's going on in history and around the world during that time, which then just makes the story so much more full. Whenever you talk about Henry Guilford, aka Fun Guy, like I want a book on this guy's life.
Right? Did you just do that? Did you just read my mind right now?
Maybe
Because
this
you're
is
like, you need to write a book about Catherine. I'm like, did you not listen to all my whining about how I'm writing a book about Catherine? But nonstop whining all day. I can't do this.
it's right.
But Sir Henry Guilford. No, I think more than Sir Henry Guilford is the Spanish influence in English partying. And every Spaniard that listens to this episode is going to say, we are good at that. We are good at that.
We are good at that.
We are very good at that.
He seems like he was everywhere. He knew where the fun was. He was involved with all the right
Master
people.
of rebels.
Yeah. He's like he's another one of these people from history that doesn't get the spotlight on them and really should, like Thomas Seymour, obviously.
Exactly. So in a different chronology, they seem like similar guys in a way, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Like kind of. I think your Thomas Seymour was more like handsome and that, but Henry was very charismatic, I think. Because I mean, he has a fight with Anne Boleyn. He doesn't. She says something, and he's not like, "Oh, whatever." No, he's like, well, lady, I've been here for longer than you know, and this and that and the other, right?" He is from the original set of friends of Henry. His name is the same as the king's name,
Yeah.
and they come from Wales too. His mom owns one of the very important manuscripts. So they're just very connected from the time of author. That's another thing that I would like to bring up. There's a lot of people that become very powerful in Henry VIII's court from the time that Catherine is in Wales. So she always carries that Princess of Wales thing, especially because when Mary's sent there in 1525, she reactivates all that network.
Yeah.
So she knows that because Henry was Prince of Wales, but was never sent to Wales like Arthur was, right?
Right.
As much. So I think Catherine was very smart to hold on to those connections. And in very short time, 5 months, but also the household that she had for a long time, she maintained those Wales connections very well. And like Sir Henry Guilford were very useful. And Sir Henry Guilford, he traveled to Holy Land and wrote a book about it.
Yeah, what a life. He had a life that we need this. I mean, Emma, you're telling us the story, but we need this in words, like written.
I know. We need this in words. I encourage whoever wants to write a book on Sir Henry Guilford, I will assist them. I will let them know where to find the sources. I don't have time personally, but he's amazing. Preferably someone with a background in art history because he's involved in the rebels and it's just amazing. And you can go down to the nails that this guy is providing, and they're Spanish. The nails are Spanish. They say Spanish nails, and even the aprons for the painters and the colors and just such a. And for people who would like to know more about how parties were, like we've talked. Remember when I told you about the carnival and how they dressed up as Turks, and he, for example, would bring different types of dances. The Moorish dance was brought back by him, and also think about someone like John Blanc, the Black Trumpeter. So all these people are involved with Sir Henry Guilford because he's been in Spain and Holy Land. So he's a traveled guy.
I think we need an academic approach on his life.
Yes, I really think we do. And look, and we already have a cover because of that Holbein picture of him. That's why I like him so much because I look at that picture, I can always talk to him. I'm like, yeah, you like to party, Henry, don't you? That's if I could spend an afternoon with someone from the other than Catherine of Aragon, of course.
Yeah.
he would be in my top, because when I started researching, since I started researching the negotiations for the marriage between Arthur and Catherine, I also analyzed the wedding festivities because it was such an important propaganda event, and I just fell in love with partying in the Tudor times.
I think it's so important to remember that they did party. We look at it as
So much. One of the first letters that the Spanish ambassador sends back to Ferdinand when Henry and Catherine are married is like, all they do is party.
I love
Like
this.
Henry's 17, and he's finally king after being almost a prisoner after his brother dies.
Yeah.
And he's got all this money, and he's got a wife that is doing everything for him because she's so smart and an international diplomat, and she is the daughter of the coolest conqueror in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, he had it made.
And then he tries to do the 1512 invasion of Navarre with Ferdinand. He fails a little bit because everybody gets drunk in Navarre. And then is when Catherine says, hold
my beer.
Hold my beer. Hold my Spanish wine, because she didn't like beer.
Okay.
She hated beer. Actually, she said it tasted really bad. Ale, which,
not good.
So bring me my Spanish wine. And yeah, she did. She in a short few years, she basically just set him to become what he was, a Renaissance prince. He had the potential. She helped him elevated him to the international sphere, right? And then in 1513, he captures Terouanne and Tournai with no other than Maximilian, the emperor. So how cool is that? I mean,
yeah. Gosh, Katherine of Aragon's legacy is phenomenal. I love when we get to talk about her. And, today we wanted to talk about her birthday being December 15th. And of course, what happened? Not only did we learn that her birthday is December 15th, but we learned all these other amazing things from our resident Dr. Emma, the Katherine of Aragon expert.
Who is writing a book on Katherine of Aragon. Don't worry, guys. It's just, and I want to clarify this because a lot of people ask me, which, as you know, as a writer, sometimes it gives you a bit of angst. But it is difficult to write in a language that is not yours. It is difficult to write anything, academic that is peer reviewed. So it's going to take a little time, and that's okay. But I'm working on it. I'm working on it very hard.
I love it.
It's nothing that I'm not telling you in the podcast, guys. So you know where I'm going to go with all of this.
You'll have an idea.
Basically, the woman that changed it all. That's all I'm going to say.
And finally, people are learning this about her. And I'm so happy that you have taught us so much about Katherine of Aragon this year.
And in the meantime, for example, if you want to read a biography of Katherine of Aragon, I would highly recommend you to read Garrett Mattingly's biography. 1941 is very accessible. You can download it for free or get a copy. And the good thing about that biography is it does have an international perspective. It's the first one and it's the first one to uncover that she was a diplomat. So even though it's a bit outdated in some things, and you will find that Mattingly's language sometimes, is a bit sexist. That's not, but overall is a very good way to start to understand that she's part of an international context, right?
Yeah.
So if you need to put something on your Christmas list, another book that I'm going to recommend of Catherine's time, and because I talk so much about art, you guys should go back to that episode where we talked about the quality in art, and that because that will help you understand why Catherine was so obsessed with someone like Holbein, right? And to bring someone like Holbein, to bring the best of the best. The guy who broke Michelangelo's nose, Torrigiano, or the most famous woman artist praised by Dürer, Susanna Horenbrüt. So if you guys want to check out that book, What's Quality in Art? We talked with Alejandro Vergara from the Prado Museum. Rebecca has her copy now. Nice.
Very excited. Very excited.
Yes. People like to get recommendations for Christmas. It's and the holidays. It's around the corner. Do you have your Santa's list? Do you write a Santa's list every year, Rebecca?
No.
No, I do, but it doesn't seem to get to the North Pole. I don't know why. My pony's still not here. Very disappointed.
My pony is still not here. I'm waiting for that private jet that I asked for a while ago to take me back and forth to England, but it doesn't seem like I'm going to
Right.
get that
It
one.
must be with my pony somewhere.
Probably. Your pony is on my private jet somewhere on some exotic island.
Probably in England, waiting. Where are these guys coming?
I was going to say we have done so many episodes together on Katherine of Aragon that I think I need to make it into a documentary where I somehow splice together these interviews that we've done and turn it into a whole Katherine. It might take some time. This will be done by 2027.
Don't promise things you can't, everybody now is going to be like, well.
I know, but I do think it's important because we have done so many episodes that if I can find a way to splice it all together to tell her story with some images.
Exactly, because we have talked a lot about her, but that's a lot of content to go through too. Because all that talking, oh my goodness. You're going to end up hating me, Rebecca. Okay, the documentary's fine here, but she's never coming to the show ever again. Okay, guys?
I can't listen to her.
I can't handle her anymore. I hear one more word about that queen. I swear.
If I hear Aragon again.
Well, one of the things in my book, let's see, am I going to call her Katherine of Aragon? Maybe not. Because
no, you're going to call her Catalina.
Well, and then she wasn't just of Aragon, and I think that plays against her.
Oh,
Thomas More,
Catalina of Spain.
Yes, Thomas More in her coronation poem calls her Catherine of Spain.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your point there.
No, but you're right. You're right. It's Catalina of Spain. She's of Spain. She's not of Aragon. She was born in Alcalá de Henares, is in Castile. It's not in Aragon. She spent most of her life in Castile before going to England. She did visit Aragon. She was in Barcelona when Columbus came back in 1493. She visited all around, like we've talked about. She even went to Portugal, this and that. But she was a Castilian above all.
Yeah, she was.
Well, she was a Spaniard because her Aragonese part was very strong too. This is the thing. She's at the birth of Spain because she is the first of the first generation of infantas that we can call Spanish infantas because they're both Castile and Aragon. So that's another thing to add.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Well, Dr. Emma, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show again today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Feliz cumpleaños a Catalina. Happy birthday, Catalina.
I love it. Yes, we all need to take some time away on December 15th to celebrate Katherine of Aragon. Maybe have a glass of wine in her honor.
Yes, a glass of wine, maybe some cava if you want.
Paint a picture.
Embroider
something.
Talk to some humanists or put up with someone really difficult, It's just normal life.
Oh, Emma, thanks again. I love having you on the show. We'll have you back again.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye.
And that concludes another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you love the show and would like to show your support, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Over there, you'll get commercial-free episodes, early access, and some patron-exclusive content as well. If you would prefer to show your support in another way, head on over to my website, tudorsdynasty.com, and click on the shop to see some of the new merchandise that I have available. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.